Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Broman Clash back in the act once again. How y'all doing? But anyways, you know me. I gotta talk about topics that I've recently seen on the news or something that catches my attention. And the topic I want to talk about is actually a topic that involved in a high school in South Carolina. Where some of my people, live. In terms of my people, I mean my family or some of my friends. Now, this topic is talking about, the Spring Valley High School incident, and where a young girl, from what I was gathering, and news articles and news pages, sometimes from lectures, reviews, and all that stuff, and they were talking about how the way this young girl, you know, she was on her phone, and people were telling her, get off the phone, get off the phone. Honestly, it didn't appear like she was giving any lip or getting rowdy with anybody. So they called a police officer, and his name was Ben Fields. He's 34 years old. Of European descent. Now, the girl in question, they didn't really divulge in her name or give out her name, not to my knowledge, but she was on her phone, but she didn't appear to be rowdy. She didn't appear to be rowdy. She didn't appear to be any type of violent or even agitated in the slightest. In fact, I think she appeared quite scared, but she was still on her phone. She didn't do anything wrong. It didn't warrant any kind of violence. But this officer thought it was the great idea to actually wrestle her down, knock her off her chair, and then wrestle her chair right down with her, trying to arrest her while dragging her off like some sort of animal. Yo, man, that's a child, and that's a young kid right there, man. Matter of fact, I can't even call her a young kid. That's a young woman right there. And you know what makes this incident even more crazy is the fact that her family, her mother and her grandmother passed away. So essentially, she's an orphan. And looking at that, and before any of you fuckers try to come out and try to say that, oh, where's her dad? Where's her grandfather? Who knows? Maybe they both passed away as well. And also, she was probably looking for some help, or she was just trying to seeking comfort because, loss in the family, and believe it or not, this was pretty recent. Her grandmother, if I'm correct, her grandmother or her mother passed away in January, and her mother or her grandmother passed away in June of this year. So it was pretty heavy for her. And looking at that and the fact that loss in a family afflicted this young woman's mind, and the fact that it still affects her. She's trying to find somebody to look out for her or even care for her. And looking at that and the fact that and then this officer comes out of nowhere, you know, you gotta understand that loss in a family also can play a part in in certain actions. Maybe she was on the phone, trying to see if there's somebody that might actually reach out to her or something. I watched that in the video, and this woman, you gotta look at it on Boyce Watkins' channel. Yeah, look at Boyce Watkins' channel, and see what he's about. And the woman eloquently spoke and said maybe she was trying to reach out for somebody. And this officer, I mean, she already lost figures in her lifetime that could possibly help her out. And especially in terms of just, giving her guidance. She lost them. She was grieving. And who knows? Maybe she wasn't paying attention in class because that was on her mind. And I could understand where she's coming from. Because I know what it's like to lose a family member. And I know what it's like to lose somebody who will support you. I'm not talking about like my mom or my grandmother, they're both still alive, but my point is a loss is still a loss, and she's going through with something. And the fact that this officer didn't even bother to ask or sit down and just say, excuse me, young lady, may I ask, what is wrong? Why are you on your phone? What seems to be the problem? And she breaks down and tells you what's going on and saying like, hey, are you okay? And if she cries and tells you that, I have a lot of stuff on my mind, and then you just don't grab somebody like that. Because I remember a picture showing off a woman really yelling at a white woman, yelling at a police officer, and a police officer doing this. Standing there stiff like a damn statue. Ain't that some shit? Now, had that been a black woman, would have been out like a light. Now, the reason, and it sickens me because when I look at that, and I'm just like, yo, come on, man. Like, especially hearing her situation, and then, hearing all these other people, especially adults that want to talk about, like, hey, she had it coming because she should have never been on her phone. Like Raven Simone was talking all that bullshit on the View, talking about she should have never had her phone now. Why was her phone? Why is there even phones in school? Like, why are you trying to transition from the fact that there was a phone in school to the fact that there's something that personally happened in this young woman's life, and the fact that she's been attacked by somebody that she don't even know, who probably don't even give a fuck about her in the first place. And that really, it boils something in me inside of me, because it's just like, yo, come on, man. That she had to deal with the loss of two significant family members. She probably doesn't trust authority she will more than likely not trust authority after this. She's an orphan, meaning that she's going through some shit, and probably in the orphanage or through some foster care. And if something bad goes down, she's gonna hate adults regardless. And then to go on topic and talk about Ray Simone and Don Lemon, these two fools, yeah, they may look like us, they may look like black, but they talk more like whites, man. And before you go off and say like, oh, now you're dealing with race issues, clash, now you're doing all that, I'm like, let me tell you something. In this country, you call this shithole you call America, you obviously know what's going on. You already know what's been going on for 500 plus years. You already know what happened to the genocide of the native people, the indigenous people, especially what happened to them. And then what happened to us, what happened to, Chinese, Japanese, overall, all that. Even some poor white people got some reaction too. And then you're going to try to tell people to like, yo, ignore, slavery, ignore that. Ignore Malcolm X. Ignore your leaders. Ignore the pain. Like, how can you ignore that kind of shit? Especially when it's still going on to this very day. You cannot ignore that. That's not cool at all. And on a plus note, this young woman lives in a hopeless country where the adults are hopeless and where the adults raise up hopeless children. And believe it or not, the children will either become the future of hope or the future of destruction. But it's their experiences that will shape them. And truth be told, I'm going to keep it real with you, man. And looking at that and looking at the fact that, like, this officer just, overall just manhandled her. Tossed on the ground and all that stuff, man. And then doing all that shit, it didn't make any sense. And I'm just looking at that like, yo, that's infuriating. Sure, she was told, like, put the phone away. That's just it. It was just a phone. Just tell her, like, hey, is there something going on in your life? Like, why are you pulling out a phone in the class? As a matter of fact, what's the point of using excessive force over a phone? That's stupid. Now and then Raven Simone, like, keep it real. She's just a bird. She's just like a parrot, Polly want to crack up some shit like that, man. She's just regurgitating what the hell other people are saying. More likely, rich white people just like, yo, just say this and we'll pay you more money. Saying like, yo, she should have never been taken out on phone inside the school. Maybe the officer wouldn't have to get so rowdy if you didn't have to take. take out the phone inside the school, inside the classroom. Okay, maybe that was going a bit too far. Nah, it didn't go far, but that went too far for me. But she did say, but to be fair, Ray Simone did say like that was a bit excessive. But she did go on and talk about how, why you have a phone in the classroom? Like, don't take out a phone inside the classroom. Okay, that's one of the rules. I understand. But you gotta think about it. Did that kind did that kind of action warrant excessive force? Did it? And I remember something I read something recently, just like a few minutes back, about like a teacher that had a student doing the same thing, except this teacher did something that one of my teachers did upon me. This teacher actually sat down and talked with one of her students. Instead of treating the students like they're nothing more than just commodity or they're just like some sort of like ego booster or some shit like that. Remember, grades are nothing but numbers, but still, you gotta achieve in school now. Don't slack off because I said, grades are nothing more than just numbers and letters. You gotta still do good. But to be fair, she, instead of getting angry or talking about or trying to get like police and all that shit, man, what happened with Spring Valley High. She said, I want to talk to my students. And once she talked to this particular student, she found out that his brother got killed like the previous night before of that day that they were talking. And he broke down crying because he misses his brother. And that's dealing with the loss of a family member. And instead of just like doing all this extra shit, just getting a police officer, especially when you see, look, it's kind of sad because it also shows that teachers don't even have enough power to even try to talk to the students like they should or like they could back then because they're too scared. Only a few teachers I legitimately respect because they at least try to talk to the students. They didn't try to kiss the ass of the students. They didn't try to do all that. They just said, you know what? Let me talk to the students. Let me understand where they're coming from. Let me understand this situation. Like, that's what this teacher in particular did. And on a personal note, it happened on to me as well. Because one of my teachers back in high school, I was going through a period of loss as well. My aunt and my uncle, I love them dearly. They passed away, a year back, and that still afflicted my mind. My mom didn't really. She said, you can't let that affect your schoolwork and all that stuff. And then come to find out, my great grandfather, was gonna pass away soon. Because, he was old, man, and his older brother, he was 100 years old. My great-grandfather was a young brother. He was, 96 years old. And, looking at that, man, they lived long, healthy lives, but, loss of a family member still sucks. It hurts. And instead of the teacher looking at me like some sort of reject or looking at me just like, man, why should I even talk to you? Why should I even acknowledge you? She sat down and asked, Day Kemp. Yeah, that's my real name, Day Kemp. That's my real name. Okay, now you know. Day Kemp, is there something wrong? Are you all right? I broke down and I just said, look, man, I'm worried. Like, I just miss my aunt and my uncle, man. And I'm just worried that, if they're gone, maybe the family might fall apart or something. And if one of the great elders, as I would call them, pass away, that kind of fear gets accelerated even further. So, so I could relate to them on that note when it comes right down to, loss of family members. That hurt. And then looking at how the way some adults, they don't even try to understand the children. They just try to look at the children and just be like, look, man, you're just a child. I'm an adult. I'm always right. You're always in the wrong. And and this incident is pretty sad because it's just like, yo, man, it shows that what if things go wrong, you just use violence. If things go wrong, you just overall just ignore what the root of the problem is. And then Don Lemon, this all right, because this fool right here, he was talking about how wait, that's not enough evidence to prove anything. I'm like, motherfucker, you see the video, right? It's right there, right in front of your face. You see an officer using excessive force. All the other people, white, black, don't even care. They say, yo, that was excessive force. That was not acceptable. You don't do that, especially in a situation where it just involved a cell phone. Just tell them, just pull over to the side and just say, hey, is there something going on? You know, because I'm noticing that you've been pulling out your cell phone lately, and you've been in a train of deep thought. You know, it could affect your schoolwork. But you know, enough about schoolwork. What's wrong? If they would have just done that instead of just having, they actually called they called it Ben Fields, the officer, Mr. Incredible Hulk, and believe it or not, this idiot used to be a football player. So what? Was he like one of the jocks on the team that just thought like, yeah, charge first, ask questions later? That's stupid, man. And plus, that was a young woman, probably around like 16, 17 years old, especially in the teenage years. The teenage years, because like I said, I could relate to that. This happened to me when I talk about loss of my family members, that happened to me when I was like 17, 18 years old. So she's going through that period of life where she's trying to she's transitioning from a child onto an adult. Because a teenager, like I said, teenager, because you're coming of age. That's just it. And you know, looking at that, that was completely unreasonable. You don't need to do that. And it goes back to how the way, you know, America looks at people of Afro descent. They don't look at us as people. They don't look at us as children. They don't look at us as equals. They look at us as animals. They look at us as commodity. They look at us as, you know, just overall just fodder. And if you don't believe me, do your history. Or they're going to lie to you about that too and call it real history, quote unquote, real history, which is bullshit anyways because it was written by the oppressor for the oppressor. That's the thing. And I'm going to put it to you in a proper context. The reason why I'm using history as a proper context because this is nothing new. But at the same time, for people to think that just because civil rights is over, everybody's equal, that's not the case. That will never be the case. Because if you let incidents like this happen, like what happened with Tamar Rice, Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, Sandra Bland, Tasha McKenna, Kendra Chapman, and you know, and Eric Garner, and a plethora of other people who were killed or brutalized by the police, and you're gonna let that slide? And you know, listening to the adults saying that, you know, these children nowadays, you know, they're so disrespectful. They're so, man, they're so rebellious. Like, we can't even control them. I'm like, no, I got a question for you too, adults. Like, seriously, just a bit of a question. Have you ever looked in the fucking mirror? Have you ever looked in the fact that, like, wait a minute, maybe we're the cause that the children are outraged like this. Maybe we're the cause that the children are so angry, are so not hate filled, but just lost. Because honestly, children, whether you grow old and still have the heart of a child, or you're a child yourself, people overall want to be understood. And that's the thing. People want to be understood. I didn't understand it when I was younger back then. But now, to a degree, I do. Because it's just like, wait a minute. Do you want to come off as superior or do you want to come off as an equal? Because people think that superiority means that, hey, I'm superior, you're inferior. Like, the whole parent to child kind of thing. If you want to know why the child is acting out like this and why they're trying to be all superior to their classmates, you should look in the mirror and just say, wait a minute. Did I try to teach people? Did I try to teach my kid, my child, to be an equal towards other people or to be a superior? Sure, life can be tough and sure, life is dangerous. But that should never be the case to the point that somebody else's kid or somebody else's child, especially when they're under your care or under a teacher's care, be brutalized, be dragged out, or being, hurt like that. Because, okay, Don Lemon, okay, Rape Simone, let me put it like this. If that was your child, if that was your daughter or your son, matter of fact, what if that was you when you were younger? What would you would have wanted done? Seriously, what would you want to have done? Would you want people to care about you and rant and rave and say, yo, we should do something? Or would you want them to just say, like, they deserve it? And honestly, in looking at this and looking at how this was just excessive, unnecessary force, like I mentioned before, and I'm going to keep on saying it again and again and again. It makes no sense. You cannot use that kind of force. Like what? Did this guy get threatened by a young black woman holding a phone? And then she experienced loss. And looking at that, instead of handling it rationally, I mean, you know what, man? To be honest, looking at how the way everything was going down, even a cop that said that Sandra Bland was arrogant, she would have been still alive if she wasn't so arrogant. And he said that the young woman in question deserved it. You know what I say on to him? Fuck you. Fuck you. Seriously. And Ben Fields, that officer, he should have known better. And it goes right back, and you know what? It goes right back to, the Texas pool party incident. McKenna, Texas, and how the way there were white adults that were saying, like, yo, go back to your ghettos and all that shit, man. Like, it also goes right back to stereotypes and how the way these officers, whether they are Uncle Tom blacks or straight up just redneck whites, guess what? If they follow a stereotype and they look at you as that stereotype, then honestly, either you got to defend yourself by using the law or you got to defend yourself by using. See, you got three choices: the law, the gun, or just straight up just defend yourself. Or there's also the possibility of just doing nothing and just ignoring them. That could work, but at the same time, just do that. You do have three choices when shit gets out of hand. And I'm not trying to promote rebellion. I'm not trying to promote, some sort of massacre against cops or any shit like that. That's not the case. What I'm trying to teach you is like, hey, look, man, you gotta defend yourself. You gotta stay knowledgeable. And if you don't stay knowledgeable, and it's just like what Too Short once said, be intelligent when you put them in check, because when you're ignorant, you get treated that way, and when they throw you in jail, you got nothing to say. And that goes out to you too, Raven Simone and Don Lemon. Seriously, it does. And honestly, this young woman, I'm sorry for the loss of your mother and your grandmother. I really am. And I'm sorry that this happened to you because that was fucked up. And seriously, like, come on. And then, talking about this, putting it into a proper context, and then talking about how the way this is nothing new. We gotta prepare for it, because if they're going after children now, if they're going after young people now, if they're attacking old people now, they're attacking women, men, they don't care. It's just an equal opportunity. Looking at that, man, that poor display of Officer Hood, see, it's good that he got fired, but at the same time, what else is new? And with that, YouTube, this is Bro Man Flash saying I don't have one. Hope y'all have a good day today. Later.